Hi everyone, this is Rosie, and today I'm going to be demonstrating how to sew in a zipper pocket with a zipper overlay. So let's get started. For this demonstration, I will be sewing the zipper pocket into a bag lining. I will be using a number 5 zipper, and I have my zipper overlay already cut out here. Then I have 2 pieces of fabric here for my pocket linings. Now I am using 100% cotton quilting fabric for this bag lining, and all of the cotton pieces were interfaced with the woven interfacing. Now because I am using a cotton lining, I'm going to interface the back of my lining with a piece of Deco-Vilite in the area where my overlay is going to go. And that will give my lining a little bit more strength and structure behind the overlay. To sew in my overlay, I will be using some double-sided adhesive tape. The one I have here is 1/4 of an inch wide. I will be using some fray check, and I will also be using some self-threading needles. The first step will be to sew our overlay to our lining. I will not be talking about measurements here because you will be using the measurements for the pattern that you are making. The first thing that I did was to draw a line down from the top that's parallel to the top edge here, and then I found the center of the line. Next, I marked the center of my overlay. On the back side of the overlay, I've adhered 2 pieces of double-sided adhesive tape, and they're on the top edge of the overlay and the bottom edge. After putting on the tape, you want to burnish it down really well. Then you can go ahead and remove the release paper. And I'm going to place the edge of the overlay right on that line, and I'm also going to match up the centers. So get it to look nice and straight. And you want to press it down really well. After it's secured into place, we'll go over to the sewing machine and sew 1/8 of an inch away from the edge all around the perimeter of the overlay. But you do not want to backstitch. We're going to leave a long tail at the beginning of our stitching and at the end. I'm sewing on a Texo 4800 Pro with a stitch length of 5.0. I'm going to use the edge of the presser foot here as my guide to sew 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the overlay. You want to leave some very long threads, which I have right here, and you want to hold on to them, and you want to hold on to them whether you're sewing on an industrial or a domestic sewing machine. And I'm going to start, and I will be sewing very slowly around the overlay. And once you get going, you can let go of the threads. And try and keep that 1/8 inch distance the best you can. When you get to your rounded corners, you want to go very slowly, and you're going to take 1 stitch at a time so that you'll get a nice curve all the way around that overlay. And then you'll just keep sewing around till you get back to where you started. Now when you get back to where you started, you want to take the threads from the beginning of your stitching and pull them out of the way. And we want to stop so that your needle is right near the hole of your first stitch. So you want to get as close to that first stitch as you can. And then I'm going to look underneath and see how far away I am. I think I can take one more stitch. And I'll raise up my needle and I'm going to pull my work out. I'm going to pull it straight out because I want to have another nice long tail there. One of my very favorite notions to use is a self-threading needle. These ones are made by Clover, but you can find them in other brands. And I'm going to use these needles to pull my top threads to the underside of the lining. Now what makes these different is that these needles do not have a traditional eye. So I'm not going to be threading through the eye of the needle. At the very tip of the needle is a little slot. You probably can't see that on camera, but you can simply take your thread and just pop it into that slot at the top, and the thread will go right into the needle. Just like that. And then I can take my needle and I'm going to put it down into one of the holes that was made by the sewing machine and just pull that thread right down in there. And then I'll do the same thing with the thread on this side. I'm just going to pop the thread into the slot at the top of the needle, and then I'll pull it down into the hole. And now I have the 4 threads on this side, and I'm just going to tie them off in a square knot. A square knot is going to be the left thread over the right thread, and then you're going to pull it tight. And then you're going to go the right thread over the left thread and pull it tight. And I like to do this about 3 times. So left over right, and then right over left, and then I'll just do it a 3rd time. After tying those square knots, I'm just going to shorten up those threads. And depending on what kind of thread you're using, you might want to singe the edge of the threads there. And then I always like to put a drop of fray check, and that's going to prevent that knot from ever coming out. The next step will be to cut away the fabric that's behind the overlay. So I start just by folding it in half, and I make a little cut, which you can already see here. And then I'm going to cut to each end of that overlay. And I want my scissors to go underneath that end there and snip. Then I'll do the same thing on this side. Then we're going to trim away all of this excess fabric. I like to trim to about 1/4 of an inch away from my line of stitching. When you do this, you want to make sure that you don't cut your overlay. And I have that tape in there, so I'm just going to pull the fabric away from that tape a little bit, and then I'll just start cutting all the way around. And I am holding my finger between my overlay and my fabric to make sure that I do not cut into that overlay. So I'm just sliding my finger along in between, again, the fabric and the overlay. I'm going to pull that tape away. And I'll just keep cutting just like this all the way around till I have all the fabric cut away. Now we can sew the pocket linings to the zipper. So you want to place the wrong side of the zipper onto the right side of one of the lining pieces. So essentially you have the right side of the zipper and the right side of your pocket lining facing up. I'm going to clip it all the way along the length here. And then you're going to do the same thing to the other side of the zipper. You'll place the wrong side of the zipper onto the right side of the lining and clip all the way across. Once we have this clipped in place, we're going to sew along the edge of the zipper with a scant 1/4 of an inch. And a scant 1/4 of an inch is just slightly smaller than 1/4 of an inch. So after clipping the zipper to the pocket linings, the right side of your zipper should be facing up and the wrong sides of your pocket lining should also be facing up. I'm ready to sew the zipper to the pocket lining. I'm using a stitch length of 4.0, and again you want to be a scant 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the zipper. Try and keep your zipper and your pocket lining edges together. I am holding on to my threads, and this time I am going to back stitch. And you just want to go ahead and stitch all the way across. Move my zipper pull out of the way. And back stitch at the end. And when you're done stitching that side, you can go ahead and stitch the other side of the zipper in exactly the same way. After sewing the pocket lining to both sides of the zipper, you just want to give everything a nice pressing, which I've already done. You want to press those pocket linings away from your zipper. Then we're going to take our double-sided adhesive tape again, and I'm going to place a row of the tape up along the top edge here. I'm using the 1/4 inch tape. A 1/8 inch tape would be better here, but I don't have any right now, so I'm just placing my tape right above that stitching line, and that'll work just fine. And once again, you want to go ahead and burnish that down really well. The double-sided adhesive tape is in place, and I want to make sure that when my zipper is closed that the zipper pull is to the left. So I'm just going to check here. Now it's open and now it's closed. And you want your zipper pull to be within this area here. You don't want to be within the seam allowances. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the release paper just from the top part of the tape. And I've gone ahead and made two little marks, one here and one here. That is the center of the zipper pocket. And I've also marked the center of my overlay, and I did it with a chalk wheel so that you can see it a little bit easier. And I want to take the center mark of the overlay and match it up with the center of the pocket, and then I want to secure down the overlay onto the zipper so that the zipper teeth are right in the middle of that overlay. And take your time with this. You just want to make sure that everything is nice and centered. And once it looks good to you, then you can go ahead and take the release paper off the bottom of the zipper and secure that to the overlay. You want to press it down really well, make sure everything is sticking well. Then we're going to sew 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the zipper opening all the way around the opening. I'm ready to sew, and I'll use a stitch length of 5.0, and once again you want to stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the zipper opening, and you're going to start and end with long tails. You will not be back stitching. When you get to the corner here, you want to stop 1/8 of an inch past this edge right here, past the side edge. You can go ahead and lift up your presser foot to see where you are, and I think I need to take one more stitch. Now I'm going to pivot and sew up the side here. And you'll stop 1/8 of an inch past this edge. Pivot. And now we're going to sew down the next long edge. And now we want to, once again, try and get our needle as close to that first stitch as we can get it. And then you're going to pull your work out with a long tail. I'm going to use my self-threading needle once again to pull my threads to the opposite side. Then after your threads are pulled through, you can go ahead and tie them off the same way that you did before. Now you can close your pocket by taking the lining that you sewed into the top of the zipper, bring it down over the piece of lining that you sewed to the bottom side of the zipper, and you want them to be right sides together, and you can go ahead and clip them in place. Now I have some excess here, and I'm just going to trim that off. So that my edges are even. And I'll clip all along the bottom, and then I'm going to clip up this side here. I'm ready to sew the pocket closed. We'll sew down one side, across the bottom, up the other side. And when I sew this, I like my lining to be face up on the bed of my machine, and then I'll pull the lining aside to expose the pocket for sewing. I'm sewing with a stitch length of 4.0, and I will be stitching about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and you do want to back stitch well. Our zipper pocket and overlay is done. I hope that this was helpful to you. I want to thank everyone who has supported me by liking my videos and subscribing to my channel. If you're not already a subscriber, I really would truly love to have you as one. I would also love to see you over in my Facebook group, which is Rosie and David Patterns. Thank you for watching.